Welcome to another Chapter Connect. It is so great to be back together again. I'm Nancy McGee. I'm the Vice President of Chapters for the Explorers Club. I hope wherever you are, you've got a great day going on here in Texas. It is sunny and warm. Spring is here. So looking forward to getting out and doing some things. I have a little bit of a glow of a tan because I've been diving with giant mantas recently, had whale shark come by, which was super exciting because it's really neat to see people get to see something that, in one gentleman's case, 53 years as a diver before he got to see his first whale shark. So, it's all about getting out there and having an adventure. And wow, do we have some adventurers teed up for everybody today. I am so excited about this program because we're going to have a vicarious experience in Africa with members of the Africa chapter. And we have Francois Malherbe here today, who's going to be our guest host for this chapter. Now, Francois, when you and I had a chance to chat earlier, oh my gosh, we had about 2 hours where we just kept going back and forth and getting to learn all about what you're doing and getting to know you is such a pleasure. I love that you call yourself the Chief Curiosity Officer, which is such a great mindset of always being curious, always wanting to know. And of course, your bio shows that you have a background in career coaching. But one of the things that you talked about that is always near and dear to my heart is being able to equip youngsters with that enthusiasm to explore, with that love of learning. And you talked to me about being able to equip those young explorers with a relevant future and how to get them to really engage in love problem solving. So when you discussed this with me, we were talking about you're using foot trekking as an opportunity to not only give kids a taste of what is sadly a dying art, but also helps encourage them with critical thinking and building intuition and those skill sets that are going to set them up for success in their future, no matter what they do, but also an appreciation, a love of exploration. So I've talked an awful lot about who you are. I know that our audience has read your bio, so I don't want to read that to them. I just want everybody to know you are in great hands with somebody who's got high energy and enthusiasm. And I can't wait to meet you face to face and get to spend some time in the field with you. So Francois, please take this away.
Wow, thanks. Thank you so much, Nancy. I really appreciate it. Yes, when we spoke about 2 hours, because that's how long it sometimes takes me to explain what a Chief Curiosity Officer does. But this time I've got 10 minutes, and I'm very, very excited to share with you, some of my work. And then also, firstly, I really just want to say what a privilege to be able to share the screen with such a remarkable explorers and people doing amazing work in the field. I'm going to introduce all of them before they talk and give you guys some background in terms of their work. But I think let me start off by saying thank you so much for this opportunity. Kevin, Brooke, Nancy, you guys really did a lot of work and behind the scenes work, and I want to just thank you so much for this. So who we have tonight here, it's very exciting. So after me, the first speaker will be Laly Lichtenfield, and I would love to introduce you guys to her. Lelly is co-founded African People and Wildlife in 2005 to empower rural communities to conserve and benefit from their surrounding wildlife and natural resources. A 20-year resident of Tanzania, Lelly specializes in holistic landscape level approaches to conservation and community development. She's an accomplished speaker, distinguished alumni of Yale Tropical Resource Institute, a National Geographic explorer, a recipient of the 2016 Lowell Thomas Award for Open Space Conservation from the Historic Explorers Club, and a 2019 Women of Discovery awardee. Lelly, I'm going to go on, you guys. This is how remarkable the lineup is. In 2019, Lelly was honored to be named the Women of Impact by National Geographic Society and featured among some of the world's leading female visionaries in Women of Impact. Changing the World, a 1-hour documentary aired on National Geographic Channel. Lelly, it's so nice to have you here. When we spoke, you got me all excited about coming in to visit you, and I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Next up is Gerrit Louw. Dr. Gerrit, I know that the G's are a difficult pronunciation. We had a laugh about that for some Americans, but I can just say Dr. Louw, thank you so much for being here. Dr. Louw is an earth scientist turned sailor, which is going to be very interesting. As a co-founder and director of Allspice Yachting, he has facilitated more than 20,000 nautical miles of Southern Atlantic pelagic expeditions with various clientele. In 2023, this is going to be quite cool. He will set sail for the Ocean Globe race, a retro round-the-world yacht race that only allows pre-1973 technology and traditional navigation techniques. So, Dr. Louw, I'm very, very curious to hear and learn more about that. And then John, an old friend of mine, John Lucas, has spent the last decade managing first-of-a-kind expeditions and projects across the African continent. As a conservationist, he has also done a lot of work around various disciplines, conducting baseline data studies regarding predator-prey relations, river health, and human-wildlife conflict. But his main body of work has managed through his organization called Explore for Knowledge. So I know John has a massive, massive passion for young people as well, and he's done amazing work. So John, I really want to thank you for being here as well. So let's get right into it. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Maybe I can tell you a little bit more because I've got a little surprise for you before I do that. Yes, so my name is Francois and I work as a Chief Curiosity Officer. Basically what that means is if you take a career coach, a trails guide, an amateur tracker, and an explorer, and you fit them all into one, you end up with a Chief Curiosity Officer. And I'm very, very passionate about trying to, yes, preserve the instinct to explore with young explorers. And also at the end of the day, I'm stealing this from the Explorers Club again, showcase curiosity in action. So let me quickly share my screen and we can get going. There we go. Can you all see if, my screen? Thumbs up.
Yep, all set, mate.
Okay, awesome. Yes, so that's me. That's my happy place behind the wheel of a Land Cruiser somewhere in Namibia next to a 1,000-year-old plus tree with a couple of young explorers in the back. And I want to show you this picture because it's relevant for me in terms of what the work is that I'm trying to do is really to conserve the future. And when you look at something that old, it puts it in perspective what an explorer's mindset can really help you accomplish. And then I've got a little surprise for you. I've got a friend, it's been quite a big last couple of weeks for explorers in all around the world. And there's one specific one that wants to send us a quick hello from the SAA Agalas heading back to Cape Town.
Good evening.
Let me just push play. Sorry, guys.
To all the African chapter members, I'm sending my regards from the SA Gullis too, where we are on our way back now to Cape Town from the Weddell Sea, where we found the Endurance, the lost wreck of Sir Ernest Shackleton. And yes, it's such a privilege. There's also a lot of International Explorers Club members here. There was a flag on the ice, I think it was flag number 35 from the Explorers Club, and it's such an honor to be able to dip your toes into the history of this club as well, and to realize that there's been so many members before you and so many members that's going to come after you that's going to do great exploration, and that there's some similar souls that's always happy to look what's around the next corner. Happy exploring to you all, and yes, I'm looking forward to seeing what's in store for this African chapter and how it's just going to exceed and grow far beyond what people thought were possible. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
So that's a little note from somebody braving the southern oceans on their way back with amazing new discoveries. The endurance was found. What a time for explorers. So let's get right into it. I'm going to run through it real quick in terms of my work. So Curiosity Company is my company that I started a couple of years ago that promises to keep the spirit of exploration alive by addressing the need for effective and relevant career guidance to better anticipate the future of work and how to solve complex environmental problems. So we do this by using tracking expeditions where we help young explorers preserve the instinct to explore, to understand the principles and the fundamentals of curiosity. The superpowers future-proof skill is still a tongue twister, but I'm so passionate about using the skill to better anticipate the world and the future of work. So this is a sort of a day in the life of a Chief Curiosity Officer. If I'm not taking time putting oxygen back in my soul on the ocean or somewhere on a mountain, I'm taking young explorers into Africa to learn more about different ways to solve certain problems that we'll get into now. So my whole idea is to show that curiosity skilled the cat, and that curated curiosity plus reflection equals your story. So if I can help young people understand in terms of their processes of career exploration, what is the future of the world of work going to be like? If I can get them to understand how to put the quality of the questions we ask ourselves back into the game, instead of stressing about finding the right answers the whole time, I think I managed to then leave a little bit more of a sustainable young explorer behind. And so having an explorer's mindset helps you put the emphasis on that good quality questions that I'm so desperately looking for. So the future of work for me will be based on solving problems, especially solving complex environmental problems. So the question for me is, what are the problems worth solving? How do we equip young explorers to actually then go ahead and solve them? And remember, they are our most sustainable source of energy. So that's also something that I'm really, really passionate about, is to try and understand these problems. By preventing the extinction of experience, young people learn, I think, by having a physical experience with the world. Yes, we can think about who we are and where we're going, but that physical experience with the world is quite important. This is little Kayla I put behind, what a risk, put behind the wheel of a Land Cruiser somewhere in Namibia. And I'm excited about sharing my work with young explorers in Africa, because I do also think we are entering this golden age of outdoor education in nature. So look at this very shocking stat where Unilever did a global study where they found that children, I think they spoke to 20,000 parents around the world and found that children are actually spending less time outdoors than the average prisoner, which is a shocking thing for us to try and understand, and really something that we need to address. So that being said, it's so difficult for us to try and anticipate the future. If somebody is 16 years old or 18 years old, how do we get them to relax and not stress about the next steps? Not even that. Even people when they're 60, I call them, I call it in their encore career. You know, so how do we build a relationship with an unknown environment, like your process of self and career exploration? So for me, it's using an explorer's mindset. And I want to read you guys this beautiful quote from the author of The Little Prince that says, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks or work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. And for me, that is like the ultimate embodiment of using an explorer's mindset, a curiosity-based way of thinking towards solving certain problems and understanding the problems worth solving. I've got this example of Sir Robert Knox Johnson, who in 1969, he became the first person to perform a a single-handed, non-stop circumnavigation of the globe. And I wanna, if there's kids, there's some young explorers that's looking in. I want you guys to notice this vessel, this yacht that he's standing in, the stinky socks, the oily old lanterns, and look how dirty he is in his hands. But then look at his face, and his smile, and his eyes, and the intensity of somebody that is longing for the endless immensity of the sea. And that for me is what makes a sailor, is that longing for the endless immensity of the sea. And if we can long for our passions, our talents, our skills in that way, not knowing what's around the horizon, if we can use that explorer's mindset to long for the ultimate expression of who we can be, then I think we are all going to make the world hopefully a better place. So it's his birthday today. Sir Robin is 83 years old today. I met him 5-6 years ago, and as you can see, he still has that longing in his eyes for what he's meant to do and the difference he's still meant to make. Okay, so let me go on. Another way of using an explorer's mindset for me is saying, let's take the seafarers as an example, and distinguish between the concepts of, for instance, wayfinding and navigation. So this is so cool for me. I love this so much. Wayfinding is the ancient art of figuring out where you are going when you actually don't know your destination. For this, you need a compass and a direction, not a map, a direction. And that, Nancy, is tying into, slowly but surely, how we intuitively make decisions. We don't know the direction. We don't have a map. We've got a compass and a direction. And that, for me, is such a beautiful way of making sense of the unknown as well. So how do I do that? I take young explorers to fantastic explorers like Lisa Hansen, a National Geographic grantee, who Laly's smiling, she knows her very well, probably, doing human lion conflict mitigation in Namibia. Wonderful to talk to her and teach these young explorers how to solve problems. Because Lisa needs to talk to the chiefs to understand the human lion conflict situation, and she needs to talk to a lot of people. So she needs to be able to understand empathy, for instance. So empathy becomes this powerful skill that we can use to actually help people realize that if we have a plan, if we have an idea, we need to change people's behavior. And for that, empathy is so important. So Lisa taught us that. She spoke to us about her work, taking thousands of photos of what's happening in the park that she's in. Now sending it to somebody at the University of Cape Town, runs it through a machine learning program, and boom, you end up with 12 lions, 36 leopards, and a 412 impala, and they all have names probably, where it used to take her months and months to work through that data. Now we can solve problems by combining tech and machine learning and so on, whilst visiting and understanding pristine wilderness, which is a very big, important thing for me. This is us, again, next to the same tree, different trip. I also take the kids to the Kruger National Park, where we really delve into tracking as a way. I'm going to get to that now. Us taking a break, kids being kids, which I think is always nice to see. The Okavango Delta has been my second home. I spent 9 weeks there last year, learning to understand what wilderness means for myself, for my heart, and trying to understand how I'm going to use those insights to help people conserve these pristine wilderness places. That's the day in the life of Francois, writing and standing on termite mounts. This is my friend Grant, taking people on really cool encounters, tracking some lions. I'm also going to take, I also teamed up with the Wilderness Leadership School, taking kids on 4 or 5 day primitive trails. All right, so let's get into tracking, and then I'm done. Then I'm going to give over to Laly. Guys, I don't talk about tracking. I say the ancient, my friends always laugh at me because I say the ancient art of tracking wild animals in foot. But really, it's important for me to put emphasis on the fact that we are actually also trying to use ancient solutions for modern problems. And tracking helps us become participants rather than spectators, for instance, on a game viewer. I learned this from somebody that I went to go meet, Trutso and her family in the central Kalahari. I took some young explorers there and spent time with them, really delving into their way of life, which was an absolutely wonderful way to catalyze curiosity with these young explorers. And then just quickly, so there's two types of tracking that really interest me. The one is called cognitive tracking. So imagine this, guys, you see a problem, you see a track, and you ask yourself, like, what is this? What was it doing? Where is it going? Why was it there? You ask good questions the whole time. Then you start to track this animal, this leopard, this lion, and you become the narrative, and you become this animal. And then you lose the spoor. So what do we do then? We lift up our heads and we look around us. And that's called intuitive tracking. What is the wind doing? Where's water? Where's shade? Where would I, if I was this animal, go? And again, that's how we build a relationship with an unknown environment with an explorer's mindset. So just really quickly, I'm going to run through this, the ancient art of tracking wild animals on foot. And actually, these things are all applicable for career exploration, is to trust your gut. What is your intuition saying? Cultures with a rich history of tracking encourages intuition and instinct and deeper connectedness to nature. Get curious and guess. Obviously, make up stories, theories, play with different outcomes. Ask good questions. I've said that too many times. And make sensible decisions. Use your senses. What is your gut telling you? What are you smelling, hearing? I always use this example. If you're sitting in a coffee shop, if I'm sitting in a coffee shop and I hear the words Explorers Club, Okavango Delta, or Land Cruiser, I would immediately look in that direction because my body wants to react towards potential. And then I would try and make sense of it. So if we can utilize those somatics again, the way we participate around us, then we can actually make better career decisions and better anticipate the future of the world of work as well. Now, you've had some time to look at that picture on the left, and I hope you all saw the leopard that lay there with its tail in the middle of the screen and the two paws, and then also the rest of the body. I don't know if I don't have a marker now. I'm going to, let's try this. No, it's fine. But then I also want to show you, oopsie.
We can see your cursor.
Can you see, is it back on now?
Nice.
The four tracks.
You're all good, mate.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so wrapping up 4 different types of tracks. You guys can all guess which direction the snake on the left-hand side corner went. Wonderful thing about the Okavango Delta is the substrate is so absolutely clear on this top right-hand track of the baboon. It's just a wonderful place to learn how to track. This is my team, my junior curiosity officer, Khomotso, and my chief hype officer, getting kids excited about the wilderness and the unknown. And then I just want to give a quick shout out to Falraven as well. I'm an ambassador for them, and they've been so wonderful supporting me. I got into their polar expedition, and since then I've done a lot of work with them. And guys, I just want to, if I can write a letter to Santa Claus, it would be to open up a Falraven Center for Exploration and have a little curiosity club there where we can take kids on expeditions and have grants and teach them how to become custodians and change makers of the future. And then I'm going to end off with a quote from Michael Barth that answered me on a question about curiosity and what that meant for him. He's the founder of the Hong Kong chapter. My invite to all of you, let curiosity take you where you need to go to learn what you need to learn. Thank you so much. And Lelly, you are up.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for such a wonderful presentation, Francois. It really resonates with me because I was also a a young explorer out there, and it'll become clear, I think, in my presentation, just making sure this displays correctly. Anyway, thank you to everyone at the Explorers Club for inviting me to speak to you all today. Thank you to Nancy and Keith and Francois and everybody. It's my pleasure to talk a little bit about the organization that I co-founded, African People and Wildlife. We are working to find the balance for communities in nature. And I was one of those young explorers that Francois was talking about. And my passion as a young person was lions. And everything was about, how do I get out to see lions? Because I'm a Jersey girl. I was born in Munich, Germany, but I grew up in New Jersey in the United States. And always had an incredible appreciation for the outdoors. And for some reason, the roar of the lion as a young person was just calling to me. And I really had to find my way to get to East Africa. And before that, this is me waiting at a bus stop at some point with my brother. Again, just dreaming of lions and how I'm going to get to them. And I was very fortunate. And when I was a freshman in college, I had the experience to go with the National Outdoor Leadership School to Kenya. And I spent 3 months in Kenya learning about the country, its geography, people, wildlife, oceans, everything about it. And I just never really looked back after that experience. I was very fortunate to be awarded a Fulbright scholarship when I finished my undergrad work, and back off to Kenya I went to do a 1.5 years worth of research in southern Kenya, looking at the question of how communities were being involved in conservation. So trying to ask one of those good questions that Francois was talking about, and really I've been asking that question for the last more than 20 odd years now, and still coming up with really interesting and different answers to it. So, but it sparked a passion for me. I was fortunate to do my master's and my PhD at the Yale School of Forestry. And during that time, I shifted my focus from Kenya to Tanzania. And you know, which both countries are absolutely incredible places to be. And this is a photo of where our rural environmental center, the Noloholo Environmental Center, is based. So way out in a wonderful wild landscape in northern Tanzania. That small little inset on the left, that's the boundary between the community where we live, called Loboseret, a Maasai community. And on the left-hand side of that boundary, you see that kind of graded, small graded road, that's Tarangire National Park. So that's sort of been my backyard for the last 20 years. A lot of exploration there. Actually, Francois and I have a lot of commonalities, because I have a huge passion for tracking, and have worked with Hadzabe Bushmen for my PhD work to track lions and other big cats across this landscape. And I really give a shout out to that intuitive thinking, because you could just see when the Hadza were looking at a track, and you could just see that they were really internalizing, you know, where would this lion go? We do not always have that beautiful substrate that you showed of the Kalahari. And so sometimes they're tracking these lions across rocks, and they're just looking up and figuring out where they think the lion would go. And lo and behold, they would pick up the tracks later on when the substrate became better. So very intuitive and incredible. But through this experience, we spent a lot of time working with local communities, trying to understand their relationship to big cats, and particularly lions, and understanding, you know, whether there was really an interest and a tolerance for these big cats in people's backyards. And indeed there was. And I think East Africa and other parts of Africa show some of the most incredible tolerance for living with large mammals that still exist today globally. I mean, it's an incredible example of people living among wildlife. And what we found is just that, you know, people didn't want big cats taking their prize cow. They didn't want attacks on a daily basis. They were willing to tolerate some level of attacks. But one of our first innovations that came out of a partnership with local communities was what you see here, which is a living wall, which is an environmentally friendly predator-proof corral. We're using comifera trees as fence posts and then chain link fencing to keep the cattle safe at night, because people tend to corral them at night. And what this does is it keeps cattle safe, it keeps lions and other large carnivores from getting in, and it reduces the need for people to retaliate against lions. And we have more than 1,700 living walls across northern Tanzania today. People are contributing to them. Community members pay 25% of the cost of installation. They have to prepare their corrals and harvest the comifera species that they plant and grow as the fence posts. And it's having a tremendous outcome. So this is a little cub called Indito who lives out in that Noloholo landscape that I showed you. Her pride spends more than 50% of their time out in the communal lands, and they're surviving and succeeding because tolerance is there and because we've been able to reduce conflict. And so we've been able to see over the last 5 years with our partners at the Tarangire Lion Project that the trajectory of the Tarangire lion population has changed from a population that was in steep decline to one that is now slowly rebounding and increasing. And that's really, really exciting. And it's because we got together with local community members to try to work on the problems that they were facing and try to understand the conservation challenge from their point of view. And here's little Indito with her mama and some of her other pride mates. And they're quite a bit bigger now, and they're still doing really well out in this landscape. And so at African People and Wildlife, we're really focused on a landscape level holistic approach to conservation. We look at layering benefits on top of benefits. So where we started on preventing human-wildlife conflict and conserving wildlife and promoting conservation, we now layer on top of that strong natural resource stewardship, helping people to manage the land, again, for their own priorities. A lot of the people that we work with are pastoralists. These are people of cattle. Healthy grass is absolutely essential to their livelihoods and to their way of being and to their culture. And so if we can help them manage those grasslands, again, because the tolerance of the wildlife is also there, we can get a win for wildlife and a win for people at the same time. And then on top of that, we help develop conservation enterprises. So where you have strong, good land use management, you can also layer benefits, working with women and other populations to strengthen the enterprise from nature-friendly efforts on this landscape. And then, of course, we're working across a very wide landscape of northern Tanzania, from West Kilimanjaro across to Lake Natron, Tarangire and Lake Manyara National Parks, and Ngorongoro. So really looking with an eye to restoring and connecting landscapes. And then recognizing that over the last 15 years that African People and Wildlife has been around, we've been really working on a model of community engagement and conservation, and we've been very recognized for this model. And we're now working on building partnerships so that we can share our model with more conservation practitioners in Tanzania and beyond, so that we can take this really good demonstration of strong conservation work in northern Tanzania and ensure that it's reaching more places within Tanzania and more broadly on the African continent. So one of the efforts that I particularly love is our women's beekeeping enterprise. So we're working with rural women who are hanging beehives out in pastures, so up in trees. And what this means with the Tanzanian beekeeping policy is that that tree is protected and that area around the tree cannot be cultivated. So again, it preserves the pasture for, again, the Maasai's livelihood, which is really dependent on pastoralism and livestock, and allows wildlife to also pass below the hives. And we're helping the women to get better benefits and revenue from the sale of their honey and other wax products. So this woman is standing in front of a women's enterprise center that has full state-of-the-art honey processing facility, that they're able to really ensure that they're getting the best honey they possibly can from the tree to the shelf. And here's a photo of the ladies, and they're just absolutely incredible. We're working with more than 100 women's groups at the moment. We're also starting to look at other nature-based enterprises that the women would like to be interested and get involved with. We've recently looked at the impact of this program, and what's really exciting is beyond the environmental outcomes of protecting land and beyond the economic benefits to these women, what they're saying is by being part of this project, they're getting more agency within their communities. They're finding camaraderie with one another. They're finding a voice within their communities. And so it's reaching far beyond some of the more typical outcomes that we'd expect. And it's becoming part of the fabric of their society. And they're saying that they're more able to and more interested in sending their girls to school. So it's having sort of a ripple effect across this community of women. And we also, of course, at APW, we really like to engage in that technology aspect too. So we're working with Esri and other partners to ensure that the women have the best tools possible to be managing their businesses, so they can actually see where they're harvesting their honey, how much honey is being harvested, over 16 tons of honey so far. So quite a outcome for these women. And again, we're doing similar things with our Sustainable Rangelands initiative, where we are working with local community members, trying to understand their traditional systems for managing the rangelands and essentially bringing that to them in a more updated fashion that uses technology to help them get the answers to the quality of their rangelands more quickly. We're finding today that with young people being so busy and there's so many other priorities, that some of those traditional systems of rangeland management have eroded a little bit, but the knowledge is still there. And so we're making that knowledge a little bit more accessible by creating really interesting dashboards. We're working with more than 20 communities at the moment to help them monitor the quality of their pastures. So all the information that you see here is information that the communities identified as being important. It is in Swahili, so I apologize for that. But what we're seeing there on the top, in the middle at D, is invasive species. At E, they're interested in the length of the grass. They're looking at how much bare ground they see, how much erosion. And in G there, what's so important is just a picture of the area. So historically, people would go out to the rangelands on a regular basis to look at the quality of the grasslands. We now help support community rangeland monitors to do this work and to report back to the community. They have access to their data through these dashboards and through tablets or phones that they're utilizing. And it's really making a difference, because what people can then do is, through their village grazing committees, they can determine when to close off particular areas in their landscape, to not permit grazing at that time, to reserve certain spaces for the dry season when we know that drought can be a real problem. And so it's helping them make longer term decisions about how they're managing their livestock. And of course, this has knock-on benefits for the wildlife that also uses these landscapes. And just as we go forward, just a few things on the horizon for African people and wildlife. We're working right now. We have a very exciting quiet phase of a capital campaign to turn our Noloholo Environmental Center into a center of excellence for holistic conservation. So we're working very much on strategic partners, working with the government of Tanzania, the Tanzania National Parks Authority, the Ngorongoro Conservation Area Authority, and other institutions within Tanzania, to be able to share our model. So our team is very busy. We call it active community engagement. They're very busy developing peer-to-peer learning opportunities, training, outreach, so that we can take this strong model of community engagement and really help to institutionalize it into the national fabric of Tanzania. And I think if we can manage to do that, and even more broadly, then we'll have really made a big win for conservation, not only in the landscape that we love and adore of northern Tanzania, but across a wider part of the geography. We're doing some really exciting work with our partners at the National Geographic Okavango Wilderness Project in Angola. Again, bringing our community engagement model to that part of southeastern Angola, an incredible water tower in the Lasima landscape, to again look at, from the community's point of view, how would they like to conserve this beautiful water tower, this incredibly important resource that is the upstream source of water for the beautiful Okavango Delta that Francois loves so much and so many other people do, and really we just completed a survey in the landscape with our Angolan partners to, again, understand from the local point of view, how would they envision the conservation of this landscape? And there's some really interesting results coming out of that, and that'll be helping us to chart our course as we go forward and do more visioning workshops with the local communities in this beautiful landscape. And then another initiative that's new on our plate, but just really exciting, I just want to highlight, is our African Women in Conservation Initiative. I was saying I've been webinar hopping tonight because I was just previously on a webinar that African People and Wildlife hosted. We had really exciting remarks from Ambassador Elsie Kanza, the ambassador of the United Republic of Tanzania to the United States. And we were showcasing our wonderful new gender specialist on our team, Priska Urio. So if you're interested in kind of understanding our approach to engaging more women in the conservation sector in Tanzania, I encourage you to jump onto our social media. We'll be sharing a recording of that webinar in celebration of International Women's Day. And with this African Women in Conservation Initiative, we're linking up with the government of Tanzania to understand what the barriers and opportunities for Tanzanian women are in climbing the leadership ladder in the conservation sector. You'll find right now in Tanzania, many of the board of directors and many of the high-level leaderships of these institutions are men. There are very few women that have climbed to the top of the ladder, so to speak. And so we're working with the government now to do some research into how we can make a change. At the same time, our team is working on developing a women in conservation internship program so that more women can get access to our model and to learn what we're doing. And it's a long-term program. We'll be also helping them with leadership support and linking them up with our many partners in Tanzania for future career opportunities. Working with girls clubs, so going down all the way to the youth and ensuring that not only are we working with the girls, but the young boys as well, to help consider equity, gender equity more fully in the future, and just a lot of other really exciting pieces of this initiative. So we do have a really exciting matching funding campaign for this running throughout the month of March. So if you're interested and you're interested in supporting this, please reach out to us and contact us. It's a really, really exciting initiative. And I encourage you to hear Priska because she's just a superstar in her own right. And this is Yamat Langai. So we just, not too long ago, Yamat was the star of a film we did on the beauty of Tarangire National Park. Because of COVID, we weren't able to take a lot of the youth that we normally take into Tarangire National Park. We weren't able to do that. So during that time, we pivoted and we made a film at the park so we could bring the park to the kids during this period. And Yamat is working in our monitoring and evaluation department. She's a young Maasai woman. She's an absolute role model for the people in this landscape that have seen a young woman transition into, you know, quite a leadership position in the organization and in her community, all the while having a family and maintaining a lot of her cultural needs as well. So she's just a remarkable person, and we're hoping to inspire more women like this as part of the African Women in Conservation Initiative. We've got some new work on elephants coming up soon in partnership with Ngorongoro. So watch that space if you're interested in watching us pivot from our big cat focus to a broader focus on other species, including elephants and a few more in the upcoming years. So it's a really, really exciting time at African People and Wildlife. And of course, we continue to focus on youth through our wildlife clubs. And again, we're hoping to reintroduce our trips into the national park this year that kids love so much. So we're very excited to get that back off the ground. We do environmental camps at our Nololo Environmental Center, and we have a long-term scholarship program. So we have some of our kids, you know, that get 6-year full ride scholarships to private secondary schools. We have a number of them now in university. Some of them are studying to be rangeland scientists. We have a young future doctor in our works, you know, another child that wants to be a tour guide. So it's, you know, they're just doing absolutely amazing things. And again, inspired by my incredible Tanzanian team, giving them the opportunity to get out in the field, to explore, like Francois says, to start asking these exciting questions, to explore citizen science and to see where that takes them in their future careers. So very exciting to be so involved with the kids as well. And I think that with that, I've used up my allotted time. So I'm going to say thank you so much to everyone. And please do reach out if you're interested to learn more about African people and wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laly. When I sent you an email and you mailed back your email signature said with roars, Laly Lichtenfield, and I really love that. And this was a roaring presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really love the combination of the technological advances that meets these local knowledge, and we often forget that conservation is about people the whole time and getting people on board. So just absolutely amazing work. Thank you so much. Laly, just quickly, if there's one problem you are very curious about now, what is that problem that you are curious about solving?
A lot of our work right now is heading towards climate change. And okay. I am very interested to explore local solutions to climate change mitigation and adaptation, and to see what solutions local community members have to this, because it is a grave concern in East Africa and many other parts of the African continent.
Sure. We'll be sure to watch this space. Thank you so much, Lady. Really appreciate it. Gerrit, over to you.
Thanks, Francois. So I found Laly's presentation very interesting, especially how they are incorporating geoinformatics products into the conservation issues. So I did my PhD in geoinformatics, so I found that part extremely interesting. There were some innovative uses, I think, which was very cool. I'm just quickly going to share my screen with you. Okay, cool. So my name is Gerrit Louw, and below you can see some of my particulars. So cool. So I thought I would start just by saying something about myself, and then I'll get to the nitty-gritty of it. My presentation's quite short, so I'll try to keep it within my allotted time. So I started out doing a bachelor's in geology at the University of Pretoria, and I really have a love for the ocean. And so eventually I found my way back to Cape Town, and I did my doctorate in geoinformatics at Stellenbosch University. But during that time, I was still doing it in earth science. I was looking at fluvial terraces or paleofluvial terraces in Mpumalanga in the Letaba catchment. And during this time, I published a lot of literature on geomorphometry, object-based landform delineation, supervised machine learning, and source spectroscopy. And so this was very academic, of course, and most of this research was funded, I should say, by the South African National Research Foundation. But during this time, I started sailing quite a lot, and I founded, or I should say I co-founded Allspice Yachting, essentially to satisfy that curiosity that I have for the ocean. And so Allspice Yachting is really now a purveyor of sailing adventures and sailing expeditions along the Cape of Good Hope, and particularly on the high seas. And so this particular photo was taken during an expedition with Greenpeace, where we worked offshore with the icebreaker Arctic Sunrise on board this 44-foot catamaran that we were working on at that time. So I just want to give a quick overview of our work with Allspice Yachting. So in the last 3 years since we've been operating, we've sailed more than 20,000 nautical miles. Now, considering that 1 nautical mile is 1 degree of latitude, more or less, that's about the circumference of Earth. So in 3 years, we've sailed quite far. And in that time, we've done 5 Atlantic crossings, 3 research expeditions, and we also did 2 transatlantic yacht races, which is really to just get people that don't typically sail, but that have that drive or need to cross an ocean We typically have a lot of clients like that are interested in sailing. So we show them the ropes, and then we set off for a 30-day crossing of the Atlantic. So I also just want to point out some interesting places that we've been to. We've visited Tristan da Cunha and Inaccessible Island twice. And these are very remote islands in the South Atlantic Ocean, not quite in the roaring 40s, but very close and very much subjected to the low pressure or cold fronts that come across the Atlantic from Cape Horn. So it's a very difficult place to visit. And you can see why in this particular photo we have Inaccessible Island, and you can see why it's inaccessible. If you look at these sheer vertical cliffs and all the greenery, only a handful of people have ever really placed foot on this island, and only scientists. I believe there's one small container on the island that people could stay in, and they don't typically stay very long. And then another interesting thing we did was a research expedition with Greenpeace. We did 2 expeditions with them, but the first one was the most interesting, where we went to Vima Seamount, which is located a couple of 100 miles off Cape Town. And this particular expedition was a ROV reconnaissance expedition where they tried to assess the condition of the marine life on the seamount after decades of overfishing. And what they found was actually very promising. They found that the crayfish populations were bouncing back a bit, and they found some interesting effects of climate change. Some fish species that don't typically occur in this area were found there during this expedition, which was a bit worrisome as well. But quite interesting, what we found there was a kingdom. So while we were sailing out there, I got an interesting call from a guy who called himself the King of Vima. And this guy claimed sovereignty over Vima Seamount. And so we had some interesting exchanges with a scamster who tries to negotiate a fee by essentially fining you. So we were fined $150,000 for sailing over Vima Seamount without a permit from the King of Vima. But after some very interesting talks with lawyers, we realized that these endeavor is actually quite illegal. So we had some interesting findings out there in the middle of the Atlantic. And so this is just a quick example of what we've been doing over the last couple of years. And so recently we sold the catamaran and we bought a 53-foot monohull for a very specific goal. And this specific goal is to sail around the world. And we're going to do this by competing in the Ocean Globe race. And I'll tell you a lot more about the Ocean Globe race just in a moment. I just wanted to have a quick overview, or give you a quick overview of the race itself. So it's essentially an 8-month sprint around the world following the classic Clipper route. And we start in Europe, and then we sail to Cape Town. And then from Cape Town, we go into the Roaring 40s and the Furious 50s. And we sail past some very remote islands like Marion Island on our way to Australia. And then we do a quick stop in Australia. And after that, we head for Cape Horn, which is the southernmost point of South America, which is notorious among sailors. And then from Cape Horn, we go to South America, and from South America back to Europe. And you might ask yourself, why is an explorer doing this? And I would like to try to answer that question for a moment. So the Ocean Globe race is a retro, fully crewed round-the-world yacht race in the spirit of the 1973 Whitbread race. And the retro sailing concept is very new. It was only started a few years ago with the latest edition of the Golden Globe race, which Sir Robert Knox Johnson actually won in 1969, being the only person to finish that race. So this is also a retro race, which means that we are allowed no modern technology at all, which is one of the main things that attracted us to this race. And this means that we are not allowed any GPS or any modern navigation equipment. We are only allowed to navigate with a sextant and a paper chart. And we are only allowed weather information via SSB radio fax machines. So we're not allowed any modern weather information or any modern computer weather routing that almost every sailor uses. And this puts you at a lot of risk when sailing in the Southern Ocean. And when you consider all of this, I must emphasize that this race is really a human story. That's a lot less about the leaderboard, and it's all about the legacy of the Whitbread race. So the Whitbread race was the first crewed round-the-world yacht race ever. And it was held only 4 years after Sir Robert Knox Johnson's landmark circumnavigation in 1969. So in terms of ocean sailing, there was a very small window where a lot happened. It's a small time, or just a couple of years, where an immense amount of innovation happened in ocean sailing. And during this time, the Whitbread race really pioneered ocean sailing, and it directly fostered the development of ocean sailing expeditions, particularly in the high latitudes. And for those of you who don't recognize him, this young chap here is called Skip Novak. Skip did 4 Whitbread races in his 20s and 30s. And afterwards, he founded pelagic expeditions that sailed this boat called Pelagic Australis quite extensively in the high latitudes. And he really pioneered high latitude sailing, and he's one of the key players in the world when it comes to doing high latitude research expeditions. And his whole story started with the Whitbread race. So it's very important to consider what the Whitbread did for ocean expeditioning. And so the Ocean Globe race is really an attempt to go back in time. It's a time travel experiment to revisit 1973 and to rediscover the human narrative and its secrets during a pivotal time in ocean exploration. And that is what's attracting us to this race. And we hope to discover a lot about ourselves and about the style of expeditions by going back in time and rediscovering traditional navigation techniques and deep ocean sailing. Okay, thank you. That's my presentation.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gerrit. I think that sailors probably are one of the people that have the most insights around what it means to be an explorer and trusting the unknown. And I would often, when I have young explorers with me, stand with my feet on the sand, looking at the ocean, going, I wonder what's there. And so I think you guys are going to be in for a very, very big adventure. Gerrit, why, if you can try in a sentence, what are you most curious about learning from yourself when you, or nervous about learnings that you have sailing around the world with no technology?
The primary concern is just making it around the world with the boat and crew intact. The success rate of these type of expeditions is fairly low. If you consider the Golden Globe race, that's a single-handed race. It's completely different animal, but it's a retro race as well. I can't remember the exact figures, but I think something like 16 boats started and 4 finished. In the first Whitbread race, there was 3 fatalities, a bunch of dismastings. So we're really going back and trying to see how these people did it back in the 70s. And I think in modern day sailing, the risk is considerably lower, and we do have world-class safety equipment on the boat. So the risk will be considerably lower than what it was in 1973, because in 1973, these sailors were really pushing the boundaries of what was possible during that time. So we don't know exactly what we're going to learn. We're going 100% into the unknown, but that's the point.
I love it. I love that you guys are tapping into the stream and essence of the spirit of exploration, just like so many explorers before you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. John, over to you.
Thanks, Francois. And Gerrit, that route looks amazing. I've been fortunate to overwinter on Marion Island. I was down there with the research team, and yeah, good luck with those roaring 40s. It's not the easiest thing to go through on the SA Gullis, so I don't even want to consider going through that on a monohull. So yeah, good luck with that. Yeah, so let's see if I can get my presentation up and running. Just bear with me for a second.
That's it. Looks good.
Is that it? Is it there?
All good, mate. Yeah, looks good.
Cool. So yeah, thank you once again for the invitation to come in and speak with you guys tonight, and thanks for the introduction and the company. It's amazing. I think we were chatting earlier about Africa being this this underestimated size of a continent, that we think it's a quick hop, skip, and a jump, or a plane flight from one side to the other, and it's definitely not. It's obviously become that over time, but for lots of us who still enjoy exploring it by road or by foot, it's definitely not the smallest place on earth to explore. So a bit about myself and my background. I studied environmental management sciences and conservation, and from there went into various fields and projects. And through this time, realized that there was a gap between what a scientist knows, what a conservationist does, and what a community member understands. And for that reason, I developed or built an organization called Explore for Knowledge. And during its time, it actually celebrates 10 years this year. So it's a decade of expeditions and a decade of education through adventure. But yeah, we want to have won awards for innovation in communication and outreach, citizen science, and various other aspects of our work. But yeah, I just can take you on a bit of a journey as to where it started for me and what we've done, some amazing stories along with the images, and then tell you where we're going into the future. So, as I said, I've been down to the sub-Antarctic and Africa. Those are the two spaces where I learned to love nature and the environment. And it doesn't seem, no, there you go. And to show you guys something a bit different is I spent quite a bit of time doing chemical and mass capture operations in the Kalahari. And this is a photograph of a mass capture boma that's being built. This device, or this funnel, gets built every day and taken down in the different areas that the capture is happening for different animals. And along the way, you run and pull the nets closed once the animals have passed you. And eventually it looks something like this, where the nets, or the funnel is there, the curtains have been drawn, helicopters heard buffalo or gemsbuck or kudu, whatever you're catching, into this area. And right at the end of the funnel, there's a little truck, and everything gets loaded onto the truck. So it's just something interesting that I spent quite a bit of time doing. And from that, I moved along to doing chemical capture. That's the mouth of a lion. And for those of you that didn't know, that's what a tongue of a lion looks like. And our surgical gloves were definitely not intact when we'd finished taking samples and working with them. But yeah, it's an amazing. If you think of taking a cat's tongue and a cat licking you, it feels a little bit like sandpaper. A lion is quite a bit worse. It feels like someone is definitely doing a good job of sanding away your skin when you touch its tongue. My work continued, as Francois alluded to earlier, working with predator-prey relation studies, looking at leopards and how they interact with livestock on farms, and determining whether they were actually consuming livestock or not by looking at scat analysis. And from there on, moved into the realm of freshwater ecology, looking at metal contamination of freshwater, looking at river health, and focusing on that. And coincidentally, at a critical time in South Africa, when Cape Town was hitting day zero, the infamous day zero, when it was going to run out of water, the first city in the Western world to close its taps. So a lot of my work at that time was focused around that. But essentially, from a young age, exploration or expedition design and photography, digital media has been what my life has been about. Started in Scouts, worked my way through, and I can definitely relate to those adventures as a young, as a youth member, going for hikes in the Drakensberg, Cedarburg, camps. Taking a camera out and taking photos, learning my dad's old Canon A1 camera, which is actually on the shelf behind me up there still. And just learning to get out there, and those scout adventures and camps eventually developed into starting a business that designs and implements expeditions and exploration for different companies, for corporates, for non-for-profit organizations, working with them to achieve their goals. These are some photos, Francois. This one just for you. That Land Cruiser is sliding down the side of that hill, and it took 2 vehicles to recover it and pull it back up the side. So they're amazing. They're amazing vehicles, but quite heavy and can't always get to where you need. Driving through rivers. These are just some of the projects and things that we've done, accessing remote locations with organizations like the United Nations and the Worldwide Fund for Nature, as well as different classes, distribution organizations, which I'll refer to later. But so, we then took expedition design and digital media, which were our companies essentially, and fused them into Explore for Knowledge, which then started solving problems for those organizations I mentioned earlier, the UN and for the Worldwide Fund for Nature, Cape Nature, sand parks, different corporates, and led us to some amazing locations, some amazing places and spaces. That's in the Okavango Delta, Nissan Patrol trying to get through to the other side of the Delta there. Which leads me to one of our most recent expeditions, pre-COVID, pre-lockdown, pre-isolation. As an ambassador for WWF, sitting in a conference, we were asked to try and solve a problem that they had of addressing the seafood consumption within various landscapes in South Africa. And the traditional method that they had for the what you guys would know as the SASSI program, the traffic light system of grading sustainable seafood, wasn't working within certain contexts in Soweto and other areas. So we proposed the solution that a holistic approach to understanding the problem from a first-hand perspective was how we had to look at it. So we got funding together. We took chefs that had prominent restaurants, and they were invited to join us on which would have been a 4-part expedition, of which we could only have did part 1 due to COVID. The other parts are still coming, but we were going to take them down to the coast and take them along the South African coastline to show them what seafood was about, show them where it came from, show them what mangrove swamps were, how prawns were harvested out of mangrove swamps, and what the effect is on the area and erosion. And that was the expedition. It was called Soweto to Sodwana. It's on our website. You guys can go have a look at it there. But we took these 2 chefs down to the coast, and the most amazing thing of it all was this is freedom. And the prerequisite for this expedition was that you had to be able to swim. That's all we wanted to know. We wanted to know, can you swim? If you can swim, you're game. You're in the vehicles, you're coming with us. On the piece of paper, both chefs wrote, yes, we can swim. We got to the coast, and Freedom was the first guy to walk up to one of my team members and said to Cameron, listen, I don't know how to tell you guys this, but I thought swim like in a swimming pool, like splash some water on yourself, but I have no idea how to swim. I'm not getting in that water. This is not going to happen. And this was on day 1 of the expedition. We got Freedom down into the shallow waters of Cozy Bay, knelt down in the water, showed him how to put his face in the water, showed him how to breathe through a snorkel, Terra joined as well. He was also the one that couldn't swim. And by day 2, we had them floating 1 kilometer off the coast in the ocean with us, with life jackets. And by day 4, we had them swimming in a shark tank in Ushaka Marine World in Durban, and we couldn't get them out the water. So this all translated back into them going back to Soweto and changing the way their restaurants work, going green, and inspiring other restaurateurs and chefs around them to do the same thing. So we were able to show a measurable impact through basically engaging with individuals and for the first time ever showing them what marine life was about, taking them out of their comfort zone and exactly that, seeking that, what is curiosity for them, showing them what it is, showing them what it is to be curious. The other part of what we do is obviously education and citizen science. One of the ways that we do that, as I explained, is with expeditions. These photos come from a project called the Water Warrior Project. It was a source to sea paddling expedition on the Olifants River, not the one north in South Africa, the one in the south, the one without the crocodiles. And we did a 10-day expedition with 10 students from various departments at the university. And the idea was to show them what conservation was about, show them what ecosystems look like, ecosystem services deliver, and also to get them to engage with various organizations along the way. So for the first time ever, we had some environmental organizations who were working together that had never partnered before, and who ended up signing memorandums of understanding with one another for the areas that they were working in. The project ended. The photo there on my left-hand side of the students carrying their kayaks on their heads is basically because the river dried up so much towards the coast that they weren't actually able to paddle on this free-flowing river. And by the end of it, students who had started by saying, why do these farmers own so much land, and why are people allowed to own parts of the riverfront, ended the expedition by saying, could more people please not own the land, and could more people please not protect the river? That we'd completely changed the way that they see the environmental areas around a river catchment area. Similarly, they were quite again amazed at the fact that this was a National Geographic type expedition, going with 4x4s through rivers and taking kayaks down the riverfront. And it was something that they thought that they'd never be able to go on, and that it would never be something that would cross their path, but we were able to facilitate it. And through that, going back to the universities, they implemented green programs. So they forced the res blocks to change all their light bulbs, forced them to look at water mitigation methods within the university itself. And that created a catalyst for them to go forward in their communities. And I think that's what we strive for as an organization. Similarly, this was a school within the river catchment areas that we work in, where the students had never seen maps before. Those were students for the first time seeing topographical maps of the area where their school was, and seeing that the river runs alongside their school, but also ends up in the ocean, because they thought that if they throw their rubbish in the river washes it away. They don't see it anymore. And we took of the community leaders in our vehicles down the river front all the way to the coast and said, well, this is where you guys are actually throwing your rubbish. They were able to change the way they look at what they do and address the school in a different way. And we found that even though we could go to these schools and run these camps and water action weekends and organize these things for them, we weren't able to resource all the schools that we were getting to. So being able to distribute maps to all of them, being able to take scientific kits through of them being able to see a microscope for the first time, things that we took for granted just because of going to university and being in the field of science. So we designed specific vehicles called mobile classrooms, and the vehicles have reached in the last 10 years. The vehicles have reached 100,000 learners through the program. So yeah, that's something that we're quite proud of, and that we hope continues going forward when the world settles down to its new normal. This is just a photograph of one of the water action weekends that we hosted, which was in partnership with Toyota, where we took students paddling on rivers. We had water testing stations and a whole lot of other various STEM-based resources set up for them in the middle of the Cederberg, which is a very well-known mountain range just outside of Cape Town. So humanitarian and conservation work that we do. This is a photograph of a women's only program that we manage, where we take young female professionals out into the field, and we engage with them from a conservation and environmental perspective, showing them different citizen science tools and methodology, but also giving them the opportunity to drive four-wheel drive vehicles in remote locations, put up tents for the first time, and experience what outdoor living is all about. And the entire intention is to reconnect them with nature and to show that the Cousteau said, if you don't protect what you don't understand. So just trying to get them to understand what it is that we're all going on about. And yes, saving the polar bear is one thing, but Cape Town is very, very far away from the Arctic, and polar bears are very far away from our minds. So just a different way to connect. Similarly, through our citizen science programs, showing kids in rural communities and school groups, taking them out using a methodology called mini-SAS, which is a quick river health assessment tool. And the tool is robust enough that the data collected by the kids can actually be fit into a national database. So we're literally collecting scientific data on an ongoing basis. And yes, it would take us months to do collective studies and do the actual methodology and the scientific research behind SAS itself. But by mobilizing schools, dropping kids off at schools along a river catchment area, you've just created an ongoing data set that gets collected every time the Friday after school club goes out to go do some insect searching. And that gets SMS through to us or text through to us, and that data is collected and put through it. There's now an app. So an app is now available. So a lot of the people have put the apps on their phones and collate the data themselves. But yeah, that is a lot of the work that we do is around mini-SAS. The other part of what we do is going to these remote locations and villages and conservation areas. It's always good to do good. And besides having the impact from an environmental perspective and a conservation perspective, we try and manage in partnership with other organizations, a glasses distribution project. And the most amazing thing about this is we were talking last week, the guys are actually at the moment on the way to Maun. They left yesterday. And we were talking about it last week, and it's more than just distributing glasses. It's a financial saving for each family, and we've collated the data, and what we found is that for every pair of glasses that get distributed to kids, that family saves a few $100s per child just in transport fees of trying to get to the local clinic, then going back to go fetch the glasses, then paying for the glasses. So for a few dollars, translating into the team being able to test for prescription on site and build the glasses. It's quite an amazing project and something that we're very proud of that we're involved with. Similarly, using our cameras and macro lenses, taking photos of the eyes, and the team optometrist is able to write referrals for them if they do get to, or when they do get to go to Maun, to the hospital. So the doctors there have an idea of what to start looking at or where to start. So yeah, definitely adding a lot of value from that perspective. So going forward, I think this is the part Francois is quite excited about, because we've chatted a bit here and there about moving forward. But going forward, basically, for the next few years, what Explore for Knowledge is going to be doing is documenting the, I wouldn't say climate crisis, but rewilding movement. So a lot of our work is focused around raising awareness, and we've literally spent the pandemic period reorganizing ourselves, looking at our digital media strategy for our organization and for what we do, and spending the last few months rebuilding the website, which is actually the new website is live. And with that being said, what we'll be doing going forward is rewilding projects, an entire series based around rewilding, and we're very proud of our new partners that are coming on board. We've got some old partners that are staying, and more than that, our Curiosity Fund is a new division of, or a renamed division of what we have been doing. This Curiosity Fund is going to focus on our education work. It's going to focus on developmental work, and getting people to join us in the field with some projects in some instances, and also move forward by supporting smaller projects within the areas that we work in. So yeah, that's what we've done, what we're going to be doing, and looking forward to catching up with you guys back on the African continent at some point.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate it. And you've meant so much for me as a mentor to bridge the gap in terms of education and curiosity and exploration, and just in terms of the logistics for some expeditions as well. And talking about that, I just want to double check the picture with the girls in the river with the Land Rover in the background. Are you sure that Land Rover didn't break down and that you guys staged that picture? Because if you had a Land Cruiser, probably, I'm joking. At least you were with Toyota as well.
I'm very fortunate that my personal Land Rover Defender and all the vehicles that we've had over the years, we've never had a breakdown on any expedition. And yeah, we're quite fortunate from that perspective. So all good media for all our vehicle concepts over the years.
Spoken like a true Land Rover ambassador. John, thank you so much. And everyone, it was wonderful to hear your stories. I was thinking Nancy should actually send your chefs the photo of where she's in an exosuit, because we've actually got a very acclaimed diver in our midst, and it would be lovely to ask how they would feel climbing in one of these suits going down into the depths. But Nancy, thank you so much again for just setting this up. Kevin in the background, you all are getting wine in the post from me one of these days.
Well, South African wine especially is one of my favorites, so that, I can be bribed, Francois.
Good.
Hey, what a fantastic program. First of all, I have to ask, do any of you guys ever sleep? Because what each of you are accomplishing is beyond human. So kudos to you. And I don't know how you're managing that. We do have a lot of questions that have come in, and I don't know if we'll have time for all of them. So I'm going to scrub through those and try to amalgamate and see if we can get a few questions answered before you guys can go off to the pub and get a well-deserved beverage for your great evening of presentations. The first question for you, Francois, is could you speak more to the indigenous wayfinding techniques and what it's like to track your way through the bush safely?
Very interesting. So it's for me, it's about understanding your intuitive knowing processes. So for me, it's making sensible decisions. So wayfinding being defined as going in a direction, not knowing your end point, is quite an interesting thing when you, for instance, are tracking an animal. So let's say we're tracking a buffalo or a leopard. Let's say we're tracking lions. And if you don't pick up on the little oxpecker bird that's sitting on top of the buffalo, flying away when you get close, if you don't pick up on that, you're going to bump that buffalo. So what I mean by that is, like, just as all the decisions we need to make in life, tracking is a whole body exercise. If you need to be able to smell, you need to be able to hear, you need to be able to see, track and signs, pick up on the little details. That's why it's so fascinating, like Laly also mentioned, to see the guys that's doing this every day. For them, it's just become this way of engaging with their environment. So they can pick up on clues, they can pick up on little details that your untrained eye just absolutely misses. But again, for me, it comes back towards use your body as a telltale towards potential, towards that thing that you are seeking, if that makes sense. So rather than, wanting to navigate towards a certain point or immediately finding that lion, that leopard, allow yourself to really trust the process of this sensible sort of wayfinding invite.
Excellent. That's great advice. Thank you. Lelly, what software was it that you showed for livestock management, and how difficult has it been for you to create the infrastructure within the communities for folks to be able to use it effectively? I think you're muted. Hang on. Can't hear you. Still can't hear you. So if we can't get an answer for this, maybe you wouldn't mind throwing your answer in on the chat. I see a muted thing. That would be great. Thank you. And then I'll just go on to the next question. Let's see. First of all, Jennifer Arnold is checking in, says hello from the Maldives, where she's diving with tiger sharks. Let's see. John, what are the names of the restaurants in Soweto?
Yeah, sorry, I was answering the questions in the chat, typing in there. So the guys their restaurants have closed down due to the whole pandemic and the COVID thing, so they're no longer around. And the last time I chatted to them, they were working for the hotel group. What's it called? Tsogo Sun Hotel Group in Johannesburg. So yeah, unfortunately, yeah, COVID obviously affected everybody's industries and livelihoods, and yeah, they no longer have their restaurants. But hopefully, their hope is that they will get back into it afterwards and work their way back up to it.
Thank you. Gerrit, you talked about the Ocean Globe race. What are you looking for in the skill sets of the crew?
That's a very interesting question, because something I neglected to mention was that one of the rules of the Ocean Globe race is that more than 2/3 of your crew must be amateur sailors. So what that means is that if you at all in your life got paid to sail on a sailboat, then you are considered a professional sailor. And our campaign is funded by amateur sailors who wish to sail around the world, and then they make a financial contribution towards the campaign to come sailing. So the most critical thing we're looking for is just somebody with the right mindset. They don't need to be particularly good sailors. They just have to have the correct mentality into going into an adventure like this, because all the other skills we can teach them. It really comes down to your personality.
I understand that completely. I hire for mindset. So
yes.
Okay, great.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
And Laly, I'm just going to check in with you again to see if anything has changed on your sound system, if you're able to connect with audio. Nope. Okay. Then let's see, I'll wrap up. John, you talked about it's good to do good. So can you give us an example of the good that you've done that you're most proud of?
Wow. Geez, that that's quite a question to throw my way. I'd rather take one of Francois' curiosity questions, but so yes, it is good to do good. And Nancy, thank you so much for posing that question. A few years ago, I was talking at the Stellenbosch Graduate School of Business. I was one of the guest speakers there, and someone, and I think this goes for all of us, somebody walked up to me and basically out of nowhere turned to me and said, I feel very sorry for you for what you've chosen to do as a career path and what you do for a living. And I was completely baffled. This was before I even started speaking. They'd walked into the room and he walked up to me and said that to me. And I said to him, well, could you just elaborate a bit? Could you explain to me what you mean by this? And he said, well, I've been to one of your other presentations, and you've literally made your passion into your career. And eventually it's going to cause you to burn out. And he posed the same thing to me. He said, well, just think about, every now and then, sit back, reflect, think about what you've achieved, what you've done, where the organization is growing to, what you guys are doing. And it's actually very difficult to sit and look back. Building, like I said earlier, I've rebuilt our website, and having to look back at 10 years of work, I've realized how much we've actually done. And I've realized how many things I've completely forgotten about and have no recollection of actually doing. Luckily, they're photographs and videos, but in looking or in listening to what this guy said to me, I said, okay, cool. Well, and he said, what is the most beautiful place you've ever camped? And I was like, okay, if I have to think about it, it was on a scout hike when we slept in the amphitheater in the Drakensberg, and at the top of the Together Falls, which is the second highest free-falling waterfall in the world. And we camped there for the night, and that sunset sunrise, is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And he said, okay, what's the most beautiful place you've ever been to or location? And I said, well, it has to be the Bangwahulu swamps in Zambia, where it's just this endless expanse of green with literally running everywhere. And then he posed the same question to me, well, what have you done that's good in life? And that one baffled me, and I sat and I thought about it for a while, and I must say that, and this is the answer that I gave him that day, was being able to change somebody's mindset or show them something beautiful in a conservation setting or an environmental setting, for them to have their eyes opened and be like, wow, I never knew that the 3 colors on a springbuck was so that it could thermoregulate itself, camouflage itself, and heat itself. Just something as simple as that. So I didn't know that a lion's tongue had little barbs on it. So I think the doing good part is just changing one person's opinion on conservation, on environmental issues, not issues as such, but on the environment, and just opening their eyes to seeing something in a different way. Even if it's as simple as stopping and looking at a river for the first time and seeing insects inside that you never knew were there. So I've got a friend who also says that you should, when was the last time you did something for the first time? Just to take your shoes off and put them in a river and sit and relax for a bit. So yeah, I think to your question, that was quite a long answer, but the doing good, I think it comes down to being able to just see somebody else realize something, or see somebody else come to terms with something, no matter what it is. I think that's a way of doing good.
Well, I think many of us can appreciate that. You know, I'm very fortunate to have had some great experiences, as our audience has, in the field. And yet, when you're with somebody having their first field experience, you know, sometimes we're jaded. We've seen it so many times. We think nothing of it, or yeah, it's just an octopus. It's just this, it's just that. But you show it to somebody else and they see it for the first time, and their enthusiasm is so infectious. It helps you reset your baseline. And so I love that. I love to have that new perspective on something that I've seen so many times before. I think that's a healthy thing. So good for you for encouraging that and continuing with it.
And Nancy, so I think it's not necessary that we've become turned off to what we do or take it for granted. I think it's just because a lot of us are thinking on such a different level, like around the world sailing expeditions, how to get 5 vehicles into a remote location in Africa to go do something, how to do this or that. Like we're just thinking on a bigger scale to run these expeditions and things that we are so inspired to do, that being able to sometimes just to hit that reset button and somebody next to go, well, that's just beautiful, and you go, well, I didn't see it there. So no, definitely.
Great perspective. Thank you for that. And I want to thank all of you for participating tonight. Francois, Laly, John, Gerrit, and Kevin Murphy behind the scenes. This has been fantastic. And I'd like to tell our audience that if you want to highlight some of the great work that's being done in your chapter, just like Francois has done, he's our guest host. We didn't have a chapter chair who is available to do this with us today. So somebody else stepped up, and I'm looking forward to having that happen in other chapters. If you've got a story to tell and you know a few others that you want to showcase, then we would love to be able to share that with our audience. Thank you so much. Africa chapter has great things going on. What a vast continent, but a myriad of experiences. And as several people put in the chat room, they can't wait to go back, and I concur.